Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Are you tired of the invite you to go back to some of our previous? And I hope you're looking forward to our next one as well. Hey, we've got a little offer for you here. We want to invite you to email us a question or comment about any of our episodes, be it today's episode or a previous one, or even one on, maybe you have a question about one of them, or you have an interest for the possibilities of an upcoming show. You do that, and you'll automatically be entered in a drawing for a free copy of our soon-to-be-released book, Recovery Conversations with Randy Davis, Volume 1. It should be available mid-July. I think maybe even for next week's episode, we'll be able to give you more details. We could possibly have it in hand by that time. 10 of our lucky listeners will be winners. Send that email to podcast@ablbh.org. ablbh.org. Include your name and town of residence so we can give you a shout out here on one of our episodes. We look forward to receiving your questions. Today, staying in line with our theme of all things recovery, have a guest with us, a young man by the name of Wyatt Sadler. Welcome, Wyatt.
Hi, Randy. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today. I want you to share with the folks your age, some of your interests, future plans, even why you've chosen to join us today. Go ahead.
All right. My name is Wyatt Sadler, like you said. I'm 17 years old. I just graduated from high school. My plans for the future, I'm hoping to become an EMT or a firefighter. I'm going to go into training for that soon. Hobbies, I like playing video games. Cooking and baking, that's a big thing as well.
Cooking and baking.
Oh, yeah.
What are your favorite things to either cook or bake? Give us an idea.
Family favorite is peanut butter cookies with my grandmother. And
Yum.
But yeah,
Cool.
Yeah.
So, what's brought you here today, and why are you willing to even join us here today, Wyatt?
So my father passed away in April of this year due to a drug overdose. He has struggled with addiction as long as I can remember, and I've known Brianna's Hope for quite a long time, and I thought maybe it would be a good way to reach out to others and kind of help them out.
That's pretty bold of someone who's 17 just lost their dad. And I don't have to remind you of this, but I want you to be able to confirm this with the folks who are listening. You lost your dad the day before your prom, right?
Yes, he passed away April 28th, and prom was April 29th.
Wow, that had to be kind of an awkward, tough time.
Oh, yeah. Luckily, I had family members and friends who were always there for me, and they continue to be there, and I can't thank them enough, honestly.
Oh, that circle of support's so important, and from both family and friends, because we can get it one place, and if we're not getting it the other, it's not a very pleasant time. And it's hard enough to deal with as it is. I don't care what your age is. I was 23 when I lost my mom, and that wasn't that much older than you. And even if I was 40 or 60 and lost a parent, that still hurts.
Oh, yeah.
That is tough to deal with. So, folks, hang with us. Wyatt's already told me, and I'm sure he'll make mention of it one way or the other. This is his first time to tell his story in a public way. And certainly his first time, not just to tell his story on a podcast, but to be on a podcast. But before we get into that story, Wyatt, I know your future plans include the possibility of you and a special friend putting together a podcast someday, yes?
Yeah. Me and my friend Harley, for the longest time, we always thought about me, him, and some more friends doing a podcast together and just talking about funny stories and just cracking jokes and just trying to make people laugh.
You had told me earlier what the title of that might be. Go ahead, share that with the folks, because I love the title.
Cheese on a Wall, because of a stupid inside joke we had for forever.
Cheese on a wall.
Cheese
yes?
on a wall, yes, sir.
Does the cheese matter what it is?
No, sir.
If the cheese fits, we throw it, yes?
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. That's interesting. Why did you know? Well, no, before I say that, let me tell you folks, Wyatt and I haven't had a close personal relationship, but certainly won each other. Fact of the matter is, tell the folks who your first grade teacher was.
My first grade teacher was Mrs. Rose Davis, Randy's wife.
Yes, so that's been a year or two anyway. And I knew your dad, Jason. Ran him several times when he worked at Pizza Hut, when he worked at the hardware store. Go back years. I believe my wife was also his teacher, yes?
Yes, she was.
And had one of your sisters, you thought?
I believe so.
You have two sisters, right?
I have two older sisters, Kelly and Sherilyn. I believe she had Sherilyn. If I'm wrong, oh well.
No biggie.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, and your grandparents, Lloyd and Susie, I've known them for a lot of years, figuring coming here today, go back about 50 years with your grandpa. We were both much younger then, okay? Yeah. So I know it was a battle for your dad. I knew a lot of his ups and downs, nothing like you do. What did that look like through your eyes? Now, we recognize and realize you are not speaking for your sisters. They could have a different point of view on these things, and it won't make either of you wrong. So what I'm asking you today is for your take on all of this, okay?
All right.
And if you're just raw and real with that, that's all we ask. So how did you see your dad's battle?
Completely oblivious to the fact that my dad was struggling with addiction. But once he and my mom separated, my mom told me what was going on. And I remember for a while I was very mad at him. I couldn't really forgive him for a while because I didn't understand it. But over time, I, got more information about what it's like, and I realized I never really asked until one day. I was just like, are you going and doing something stupid? And he was like, no, I'm doing something to help us out. And he told me about Brianna's Hope, and I asked him if I could come join him. And then I started coming with him on a fairly regular basis. Most definitely, yes. Through that, but most importantly, I figured out more what it's like to be in an addict's shoes, and I learned more about, what it's like with my dad and what he went through.
So what were your dad's behaviors like as far as father-son toward you, with you, and so on?
For the most part, it was pretty laid back. It was, in all honesty, it was more of a friend type relationship than a father-son relationship at most times. And there were good parts and bad parts about that. But just he was always there for me when I needed it. He always was, a good dad. Just sometimes he didn't really know what to do. I knew he did his best with raising me. And yeah.
So you obviously have a lot of respect for him. You're not going to define him by his addiction.
Definitely not. No, I know that he didn't want it just as much as I didn't want him to have it.
So tell us some of those high points with your dad, the things that made him a special guy. I know you talked earlier about his love for music, and I know he seldom, if ever, saw a stranger. Okay, I knew him that well.
Yeah.
And he always had time to talk. But tell us what it was like to have Jason as your dad.
He was very much fun-loving. When I was a lot younger, we spent quite a bit of time with our friends. We used to own a boat, and we'd go out and they'd go party on the boat and all that kind of stuff. I will give him props. He was always very good at keeping the drug use away from me and my siblings and all the younger people. He tried to make sure that we weren't exposed to it. And so I really couldn't tell. But I remember just Dad always liked having fun. As you said, he loved music, specifically rock music. And I'm blanking, sorry.
No, that's okay. You mentioned earlier how your understanding began when your mom sat you down and talked to you about your dad's struggles. Yes?
Yeah.
Did you ever have that sit-down talk with your dad, knee-bone to knee-bone kind of thing, across the table, him explaining or...
Kind of, but we never really, sat down and... Well, that's a lie, we have. Just it's been forever ago. But we've talked about it before, and, it was already at a point where I had understood what was going on. I had kind of figured it out on my own, and he just kind of told me, I want to get better. I don't want this just as much as you don't want this. And he told me that he was going to work on changing by going to Brianna's Hope, and, he did for the longest time.
I know there were times where I'd hear either in the community or just by looking at his attendance at the meetings, I know there were some highs that were not drug-induced. They were natural highs of having hope and believing he was going to get there and others believing in him. Of course, we always carry that caution. And we know that the next use can be the last use. But I do know your dad had reasons at time to believe he was going to beat the addiction. Is that accurate in your mind?
Oh, yeah. He was clean from, any sort of drugs for a long time, but he had, stopped. He had started drinking more, but he was glad that he was off of, pills and, hard drugs.
Well, that's a big step, and I'm glad he was able to recognize that. Do you have any understanding or knowledge of how your dad's use of drugs started? Have you ever been told by anyone what they believe it was?
The cause of what?
Yes. What precipitated his usage?
I'm not fully sure. I know he was about my age when he started just smoking weed, but I'm not sure when exactly he started doing drugs. I know that for a good portion of his life, he lived in Florida, so I could assume maybe it started through that because it's Florida.
Yes. Okay. What are some of the early moments for you that you recognized your dad was struggling? What are some of your first indicators?
Looking back on it, I remember there were days on the tail end of my parents' marriage where he would, go to work and then he wouldn't come back till late at night, or he would be more agitated with us. And, I just thought maybe he was still at work, but
Bad day at work.
Yeah, something like that. But then as I got older, he told me that he was going to people's houses to use. He would go there right after work, use, and come back home and
not be in a good state of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, to say the least. How did you feel about Wyatt at that time? What do you think his addiction, his use has done to you? How has it caused you to face life?
When I was younger and I first found out about it, I remember I felt like it was my fault. I felt like I was being a bad son, and I placed part of the blame on myself internally. But now, as I'm older and I've learned more about it and I've learned to understand it better, I've kind of thought, it's like if my dad was able to deal with his addiction better, I can deal with, my issues better. I just kind of think like my dad could do it. I can do it too. I can be better than that. I was always told by him, do as I say, not as I do.
Oh, I've heard that line often.
And so I've always kind of told myself, I want to be better than Dad. I want to put myself in a better spot for my future family and just me in general. I want to be better off.
That early age guilt's understandable, but it was wrong now, right?
Yeah.
That regardless of how you may have wanted it for him, how anybody else in the family may have wanted it for him, your sisters, your mom, his parents, his best friends, the choice. And I don't want to confuse the idea of choice with this being a disease, because indeed addiction is a disease. But his choices, he was responsible for them. Even if he needed help to make them, the final choice in anything belongs to us. It's either a yes or a no in our actions or coming out of our mouth, for sure. You've already said you've recognized your dad has a struggle. You don't want to face that struggle. Is that what's kept you away, Wyatt, from any kind of usage? Because addiction's a generational thing, an environmental thing. I don't know. Tell us, what's that part of the battle been like for you?
So for me, for the longest time, I was already like, I don't want to use drugs. That just doesn't sound like a good thing. It can ruin your life. But as I learned that it is hereditary or generational, it's helped me stray away from it even more, keep from doing that, because I know that if I were to even try it once, I am at a much higher risk of becoming addicted to something.
By all means, that risk is monumentally higher.
Oh, yeah.
When it's in, quote, the bloodline.
Oh, yeah. And even with drinking, I have no real intention of doing that anytime soon, just because he was a heavy drinker, as well as an addict. He definitely focused more on the alcohol than the drugs as he got older and got through his drug addiction.
Just a couple of months ago is when your dad overdosed and passed, right? Just
Yes.
about 2 months ago, just a few days shy of that.
Yeah.
What were your immediate feelings at that time? Can you tell us? I can guess, but I want to hear it from you.
So is it okay if I kind of go and talk about the story?
Absolutely.
So
please do.
me and my friend, we went to a school event at night, and when we came back, he had a friend over, and the friend immediately, as soon as we walk in the door, was like, hey, Jason's acting really weird. He hasn't woke up in like an hour. And last thing I heard from him was like a really loud snore like 15 minutes ago. So I just thought, oh, okay, he's probably just passed out drunk or something like that. And so I go and check on him, and he's, unresponsive. And I'm just like, okay, there's no way he's dead. And so I just start,
No way he's dead because you didn't want him to be. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I was like,
he's words in your mouth.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't want him to be dead, so I was like, no, he's just asleep. Yeah, I was just denying that he was
the possibility of him actually.
Yeah,
being gone.
and so I start, kind of smacking him around. And I was like, hey, Dad, wake up, we're home. What's going on? And then after about a minute of, just kind of like jostling him around, trying to get him up, I was just like, okay, something isn't right. So I check his pulse on his wrist and nothing. And I'm just like, oh no. Then I check it on his neck. I check I think it's your jugular vein you check. And then I took my flashlight, my phone light, and I put it up to his eyes to see if they would dilate. And there was nothing. And when I turned on the light, I could see his face fully illuminated, and it was like the darkest shade of purple or blue that I've ever seen on someone. And that's when I realized I need to call an ambulance or something. So I told the friend that was there, friend, air quotes, I was like, hey, I'm going to call my sister because she's an MA and ask her, what do I do? And I call her, and she was just immediately like, you need to call 911. We'll meet you at the hospital. And so I tell Harley and I tell the girl, I'm like, hey, I'm going to call 911. And the girl immediately was like, they can't know I was here. My parents can't know I was here. I'm gone. And she bailed on us. So me and my friend were left home alone with my dad and the 911 operator. And we started.
Let me interrupt one moment.
Yeah, sorry.
No apology necessary. How long of a time frame was that from the time you went into your dad's bedroom or wherever he was sleeping to the time you called 911? How long, ballpark it?
I think it'd be around 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Please go ahead.
I checked his pulse and all that stuff. I found Narcan in the bathroom. I knew he had Narcan stored just in case. And I did 2 things of Narcan, and it did nothing. So that's when I called 911. And so I started doing CPR on him. I had to drag him off his bed onto the bedroom floor. And I started doing CPR. And that's when the panic really set in. I was like, oh crap, he's probably dead. And I'm lucky enough that my neighbors and the people around me in our neighborhood are all EMT, fire, so they were there pretty quick.
Albany is tremendous with
I love
service.
I love the EMTs and
services.
Yes, I love the first responders there. And so my neighbors came in and there was like, hey, we just saw on the dispatch thing what's going on. And I told them. And so they start doing CPR. And my grandparents come and there's like, hey, Kelly called us. What's going on? I tell them. And so there's like, okay, we'll go to the hospital. And I tell them I'm going to go with Dad. I want to be with Dad. So them and my friend, they all drive to the hospital. My sisters are at the hospital. And then I'm in our front yard in an ambulance talking with the fire chief in Albany. And we're just sitting there trying to keep my mind off things. And I don't know, it felt like it was 15 minutes, but it was probably more than that. My neighbor comes up and she's like, we're really sorry. There's nothing more we can do. He's dead.
This neighbor, is she a member of the emergency medical services of some type?
Yes, she's EMT in Albany, I believe.
Okay.
But she, she's the one that told me, and I looked at her and I was like, "You're kidding. Like, there's no way he's dead." And she came and she walked me to a truck, and I remember the last time I actually looked at my dad was when I was walking to the ambulance. I turned around and I could see his face out of the window while they were covering him up with a sheet, and I just broke down crying. I almost fell to the ground, and I had to be helped up into the truck. And
no shame in that. No shame. Don't ever, as much as it hurt, don't ever feel any shame for that.
But when I was driving to the hospital with the fire chief, he was asking me, what was I wanting to do? And funnily enough, my grandpa and we were talking about becoming a firefighter because, it pays well and it's a highly respected job. And I thought I would like to do that because I would get to help people. And ever since I was really young, I've always wanted to do something that would help. I went from wanting to be a cop to wanting to be a therapist or something like that. And then now I'm wanting to be a firefighter or an EMT. And he said that he thought I'd be good at that. And he gave me an opportunity. And so I'm going to take it.
Well, congratulations. And I hope that plays out well. And thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. I know it can't be easy to relive, but I know that's part of the healing process. After you got over that initial release of anxiety and hurt and tears, was there some anger?
Oh, yeah. I remember actually I had been bottling it up for a really long time, and the night of my graduation party, I just couldn't handle it anymore. So I went out in the woods near my house and I just started screaming and crying. And I was just like, I was asking for a response from my dad. I was just like, why did you do this? I'm so close to one of the biggest achievements I'm going to have. Why did you decide to be so selfish? And to no surprise, there wasn't a response.
No, but for you to be able to voice that at such a time as that is pretty insightful. That's something a lot of people don't want to admit the anger. They don't want to admit, the fact, why were you so selfish? To be able to say that's big. And that's part of your healing. And I know you think no less of your dad for the way that he passed, but by the same token, there was some control possibilities that he didn't exercise. And then you had to suffer the loss at such an important time in your life between prom and graduation, and that's a big time in your life anyhow, with its own challenges.
Yeah. And I just remember I didn't go to school for the first day back, but then again, it was senior skip day. But I remember a few of my teachers, they were even like, we're surprised to see you back so early because of what I went through. And by prom, the principal already knew. My neighbor's the police commissioner, and he had already told my principal about it, and he came up to me and there was like, hey, if you need anything, just let us know. And I was like, how? And I was very confused because I was like, the only people that know about this are family and my 3 friends. So I was like very much confused, and he was like, well, I have connections.
Good, bad, or ugly, that kind of news travels in a hurry. Wyatt.
Oh, yeah.
Is it Mr. Conley? Is that your principal?
Yes.
I've known Mr. Conley for a number of years. Of course, he was there at Albany Elementary when Rose was teaching there. I count him as a good friend, not that we're together a lot, but I have a world of respect for him. And you're not the first one to tell me of moments like this where he was there for people. He cares. You lived in a community that cared and continues to care. And you've had a lot of support, and I am thankful for that for your sake. And I hope other communities, other people are listening. We don't have to have details. We've just got to have a positive response. We've got to be there to encourage, to pick a friend up who drops to their knees at a time such as this, just to let folks know they matter. Indeed, your dad did. Indeed, you do. And people were trying to say that. Do you feel in any way that during this whole struggle time for your dad that you could have done anything differently that would have made a difference?
I remember back at the tail end of my 8th grade year, I had heard that he had relapsed, and I was extremely angry with him. I felt like he had kind of broken my trust, I feel, because I've tried to always be there for him when it came to his recovery. And I remember he had told me that he had given, I forget if it was you or someone else that ran a meeting, all of his tags and just said, I'll be back for these another time. I messed up. And I was very mad at him. And for a while, I stopped visiting him. And when I did that, he decided to move to Florida in April of 2018, or in like March, of 2018, sorry. But I honestly wished that I wouldn't have done that, because if I was there for him more, maybe it would have helped put him on the right track faster. It would have helped give him more motivation to do better.
And I'm going to guess if you'd have known that was the way to be, that's what you'd have done. But you had to make the best decision for you. Had a young lady there in your chair some time back. Her name is Lily. She lost her dad at a young age. And I'll never forget, she made a comment to her dad. Dad, I can't let you in and out of my life as you choose if it's only going to bring more hurt and more pain to all of us. So there came a time, the scriptures even say, there's a time to shake the dust off our feet and to walk away. So I hope you'll come to forgive yourself of that. And could it have made a difference? I guess we'll never know.
Yeah.
We can wrestle those woulda, coulda, shouldas the rest of our life and still have no answer.
Yeah.
If your dad was here today, what would you want to say to him? What would you want to say to him?
I honestly would want to ask him if he's proud of me, because I graduated and he dropped out and got his GED back in 2000. He didn't graduate on time, so I always kind of thought, it was like, well, hey, I'm graduating on time at least. That's good for me. But I honestly would just want to ask him, are you proud of what I'm wanting to do? Are you proud of, my achievements in life so far, even though it's just graduation and really nothing else?
Nah, not just graduation. It's graduation. And I know you'd rather hear it from him, and I wish you could. But him, if he knew what you were doing here today, there aren't a lot of 17-year-olds who are willing to take that seat 2 months after their dad whom they loved. I almost get it if there was if there was anger and angst and viciousness between the two. That's not the case here. Your respect for him is high. Your love for him was just as high. But the willingness to come here and do this to where maybe he felt he couldn't make a difference, but his story could. And I hope that is the result of our time together here, Wyatt. So is there anything else you'd like to say to anybody out there, any young person who may be struggling because of a parent who has their own addictions? Any kind of advice, warning, caution you'd want to, give to them?
To any people or kids who have parents who are struggling with addiction, stick with them, because just like you can have a mother's love is like no other, a child's love can honestly be like no other either. I like to think, at least, that I helped my dad, and if your parent is struggling with addiction, maybe you can help them too. You can help them get on the right track and get better. Just don't give them infinite chances, but just be there when they know they need it. Be there when they're ready to try. And
be there when they're ready to try. Those are powerful words. I don't care who you are, what age you are. As family members, that's the case. And that's not always easy, because we've been manipulated so many times. We've been lied to. But by the same token, there comes a time to step back into the game. And I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah. If you can usually tell if it's someone like your parent, if you feel like they're being true and genuine, that they want to change and be better and fix your relationship, give them that opportunity.
Amen to that. Yes. Well, listen, Wyatt, I thank you for your willingness to share today, your vulnerabilities. I thank you for what you've had to offer. Your dad was a friend. He impacted a lot of lives. I appreciated him, the rest of your family. Folks, hope you heard that. Hang in there with your loved ones. We never know when we can help them turn that corner. And just as Wyatt's made it clear here today, he's not going to define his dad by the way he passed, but by the way he lived, the love that he shared, and the joy that he had. God bless. Thank you. Stay in the battle. Amen.